everyone, and welcome back to Behind the Mask. I'm one of your co-hosts, EJ, and joining me today is Lori.
Hello.
And T.
Hey, everyone.
This is episode 21, which we're calling The Masks That Weigh Us Down, Part 2. If you remember from episode 10, we actually did Masks That Weigh Us Down, Part 1, where we focused a little more on the physical and emotional sides of being overweight and the struggles that we deal with. And so now we are going to talk about kind of the Part 2 of that. Talk about maybe some updates and what's been going on in our lives, as well as, letting Lori check in because she's back after being sick for so long. And today, I think the primary focus is going to be mental and spiritual, but I think of some of what we talked about in the previous episode is also going to come up again because things have changed since then. So join us and we'll chat away. Just a friendly reminder that anything discussed in this podcast is not to be used as a diagnosis or replacement for conversations with your own doctors, therapists, psychologists, or other medical professionals.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm alive. I survived COVID, double pneumonia, and sepsis. Just saying those three words together is very monumental, and it was very scary. It was tough. Before I go any farther, ladies, just a couple days ago, I got to actually listen to the episode that you did while I was out sick. And I just want to say, outstanding, thank you. You guys are amazing. Thanks for going on and doing the things that you did. You made me cry. So thank you. It was a little scary outside of my stroke 4.5 years ago now. I don't think I've ever had anything as close to death as that. My sons were getting calls about, going to, can we crack her chest and can we intubate her? And, we're not sure she's going to make it, blah, blah, blah. I say blah, 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 just because I think sometimes we have to just temper that heaviness and, kind of make light of it because we're talking about masks that weigh us down. It's a heavy topic. And so sometimes I think, I don't even know it, but I just kind of gloss over some of it because it was intense. Most of my friends and my what I call my tribe, I think everyone, as you guys mentioned, was able to notice that this was something very different. I wasn't able to communicate the same way. I wasn't on any social media. I wasn't texting or anything. If you weren't, the two of you, two other good girlfriends, and my boys, I wasn't able to, I had no energy. The first 72 hours is kind of like a science fiction movie reel that plays in my head because everybody's garbed and the masks and the stuff. And I felt like I was on what's that Outbreak or whatever, and everybody's garbed up. And, that's definitely how I felt. There were only a couple of teams that were working with me. I happened to be, praise God, the only patient with COVID. So they just marked off the end of the Wing 800, and said, nobody can go down this hallway unless you're on these couple of teams, It was very, very different. It was very surreal and very scary. But here I am, not unfortunately not near as far along in the recovery process as I would like. They still I'm getting ready to get some in-home oxygen because every time I get active, I take these dives and I can't. So I can sit and I can do this, but the moment I get up to do more than just simply do a very, very simple task, I'm ready to pass out. My oxygen levels are dropping and my heart rate spiking. And, it's been a thing. I have in-home medical care nurses and physical therapy and occupational therapy. And, it's been a crazy, crazy adventure, but thanks for letting me take a little bit of time to share.
Well, before we go on, I just wanted to so this happened around the 1-year anniversary of your surgery.
That's right. Right. I was so
So
cruising along.
and you were so excited because we had adjusted our schedules for our podcast so we could have this episode and record it a month ago. And then you got sick. And so I'm like, wow, this was a year, which also was a big concern because you weren't able to eat a lot anyways because of surgery. And then on top of that, you were not feeling good. So then you were so your blood sugars were off even more so than normal and stuff. So you had a lot of other issues, which is one of the side effects, unfortunately, of bariatric surgery, is that oftentimes when you do get sick and you're not feeling up to eating anyways, you're not getting that little bit of nutrition that you're used to having. So then that can cause other problems. So it just kind of snowballed.
It is a very fine balance that you're trying to achieve with bariatric surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very easy when that cycle gets off to become malnourished, to have all of your vitamin levels, all that stuff going all over. It is a fine balance that you're trying to achieve with bariatric surgery, and not easy. It's a daily thing.
Yeah. So where are you at with your recovery, with your surgery and stuff? Your weight loss journey.
So with weight loss journey, I am 96 pounds down.
Awesome.
It's really awesome. I'm really excited. I'm so close to that 100 mark, Before COVID, I was doing between 6,000 to 8,000 steps a day, dancing all over my house. I love to tell Google what to do, and it just turns on some fun music and I just dance all over my house. Wouldn't do that out in public just yet, but gone through lots of different clothes and definitely looking different. I went to a meeting here where I live, my HOA meeting, and at the holidays, and 2 of the women thought I was new and that I just moved in. It felt really good, and it was really strange, but it was just, and a lot of people have said, Lori, you're looking so good. And, I'm of course highlighting, I'm doing all the good stuff. There's been some downsides too. It is very difficult to stand in front of a mirror and reconcile what I'm seeing, or to have someone take a picture of me. Tina, you and I have talked about that before, and I think we talked about it on the first episode. I went back and listened to our first episode because I just kind of wanted to recapture where we were. It is difficult to reconcile currently what I'm seeing, or somebody will capture a picture and I'm like, oh, that's me. And I'm like, oh, I look different. Of course, my hair. So I freaked out. I had long hair, down to here, and 4 12-inch braids we cut off and sent for donation for children in cancer, which I love to be able to do. But one of the things that I didn't hear a lot about before my surgery was this possibility of hair loss. I'd heard it from one person, but I thought only one person, and mine will be fine. I have an amazingly healthy hair, and it's going to be fine. And we got about maybe 3 months in, I think. And all of a sudden I felt worse than my son's Siberian Husky. I'm like, everywhere I go, I'm shedding like a dog, and I have tons of hair. And so it was everywhere. And I cried. I literally had to grieve over the loss of my hair. I don't think I realized that I was that vain, or that it mattered to me. Or maybe
it's not vanity.
Okay. Maybe it's just that I wasn't in control.
It's change.
Yeah, it was change. And I had no control over it. It was just my body's way of responding. The nurse was like, Lori, I'm not sure you understand how close to death your body comes when you go into surgery, and it's massive recovery time. And she said, right now, your body has to focus on the very basics, and you can't focus on anything else. It has to just focus on the basics. And so hair is not an essential thing.
Right.
So it's this natural thing that happens. And I was like, well, that stinks. Can I just tell you? Like, that is, so I never do, the more y'all get to know me, I never do anything little. So then I was like, well, fine. I almost shaved it all off like some cancer patient, but I was like, fine, just cut it all off. And so going to this hairdresser who I'd never met before, because, everything's changed after COVID, right? So find this new hairdresser, I go in and I'm kind of telling her my story, and she's putting my hair into these little ponytail things, and we braided them and, did everything they asked us to do to send it in. And so she goes, right before she's cutting it, she goes, I'm going to cry cutting this off. She goes, and I had a couple of tears in my eyes. And, so we snipped off these four 4-inch braids, 12-inch braids of hair and cut it off. And it's grown out now because I've been sick and in a hospital and whatever, but it was really short and spiky there for a while, kind of a very pixie cut. I called myself Tinkerbell's grandmother because I'm definitely graying. I'm actually thinking about getting it colored silver, just because I think it would be fun.
And we can call it the Silver Surfer.
Oh, I love it. I love it. This is a good idea. I think I'm going to have to do this. I got my birthday coming up soon, so I might have to do that. So that was a grieving process. I had an episode, gosh, what happened there? Had an episode where I got re-hospitalized for almost
Malnutrition.
Right, for malnutrition. I was trying to think what brought it on. I can't even remember now, but
you were still taking the same dose of diuretics that you were taking before you lost the weight, and it was causing you to not be able to keep enough fluid in your body you were getting dehydrated.
Right. So I get in and literally, didn't they? No. And they also started me on a new med.
Remember? Yeah, that's right. The other one.
Yeah. Off insulin, right? Because that was one of my goals. So I was so excited. You guys, I was so excited. So I'm getting off insulin and they wanted to put me on an oral drug. Somewhere in there, somebody forgot to do their homework. And this drug in particular, specifically, like in the very first lines said, do not give to bariatric patients. Somebody missed that. So we had to then realize that any changes in medication have to go through the bariatric team, the liver team, and my pharmacist has to really look like we have to do a whole thing. So again, thank goodness I do have a good team. I know somebody made a mistake. It was just a mistake and these things happen. But with that new drug, the doctor in the hospital, everything was literally, my body couldn't hold on to anything. So I was getting nothing and I got malnourished. I was totally dehydrated. They put 4 bags in me just that first night. Remember, I'm remembering that. And so that was really kind of scary. And so literally I had to just have all this new food and all this new stuff in my body. And the doctor's there and he goes, while I'm at it, has anybody changed any of the amounts of the medication? Because you've lost, at that point, I'd lost over 60 pounds. And he's like, this is enough for somebody that's 60 pounds heavier. So we have to adjust all these things. And I was like, oh, well, that's not rocket science. That makes sense.
Which is common, but with COVID, the appointments have been few and far between because you can't get in as frequently.
Right.
And I know a lot of people have been struggling with similar things, not just with weight loss, but just within anything. There's less check on certain medications that usually need to be monitored.
Right. And so nobody thought about that. And they're like, well, that's part of the problem, Lori. So it was interesting. And then I would say probably, again, I don't like talking about my body or what I look like, that's just a thing. With my past, it's just a very difficult topic to talk about. I've really struggled with clothes, how they fit, how they don't fit. I'm also, and some of you may connect with this, I live on disability. I don't have a lot of money. So I can't just go out and buy a new wardrobe. Like, that sounds lovely, but that is not in my budget. I don't have it. And so I have some amazing friends and family who are giving me clothes and things, but they're not always colors that I would wear or styles that I would wear. And that's not to say I'm very, very grateful, but it's been hard because, again, it's one of those things I don't have a lot of control of. And I've kind of just had to, please don't take this wrong if you've shared something with me, but I just have had to make do with what's in front of me. And so then when I go to look in the mirror, I'm like, well, that's not me. I don't feel a connection. I feel right now, often when I look at, I've never worn green in my life. I don't even like green. I mean, if outside on the trees, I love it, but not on my clothes or in my house, unless you're a pretty flower. I just, so it's something that I have to deal with a lot because currently right now, I'm not in things that I would wear. I'm not in colors that I would wear. And I find it affecting my emotions, affecting my thoughts, affecting the way that I viewed some of my great successes. It's kind of this just kind of this extra burden that is weighing me down. Yeah, go for it, Tina.
So yeah, you see me chomping at the bit here. So a couple of things. First of all, fully acknowledging the fact that it's not just the clothes that you're dealing with changes on, it's your body, your actual body. And so you're having to adjust to how that looks, how it feels, to be able to move a certain way. I think how long have you been at the weight you were or around that weight you were prior to the surgery?
More than a decade.
Right. And you have trauma reasons that you put the weight on,
right,
and kept it on. But more than that, you adjusted to how that looked and how that felt.
Right.
And so now you're coming back down. So you're having to deal with all the reasons you put that weight on and having to adjust to that. Now let's talk about the clothes for a second. Just some ideas that popped in my head, and I'll forget by the time we're done with the podcast to tell you this. So I'll tell it to you now. What I would suggest is a couple of things. First of all, acknowledging that wearing other people's clothes is like being another person.
Interesting. Okay.
Number one. Number two, that if one thing you can look at is this can be an adventure. You're going to find out what you do and don't like, and that's okay. Like, I'm one of the people that has sent you clothes. I am perfectly okay if you don't like some of them. Sometimes some of the things I'm sending you, I got out of my closet because I didn't like how they looked on me. But I get clothes from other people, and sometimes I keep them because I discover, oh, I wouldn't have guessed I like that.
Right.
I like that.
I loved.
Right. And so then I get really excited. And then some things it just doesn't fit my personality or doesn't fit the way my body is structured because I'm short and stocky, but so that's that aspect. Another thing I would advise you to do is to get sort of put together some sort of, they're called different things, but you make a board and start finding pictures of clothes you do like and you would like to see how they look on you, and this kind of set up or a journal or something to kind of paste them in And then when people are like, well, what do you like? What is your style? You have a picture of this is what I would like. This, you know, because there's a lot of things that have changed since you've been the weight you are now.
Yes.
You've gotten older, your tastes have changed.
That's true. That's true. I really like that. And I like that you brought up, because, you know, I like adventures and I like new things. And so I, you know, I do kind of feel a little like one of my close friends is an artist, and he's doing board games and all this stuff, and he's just put out, he did all the artwork for this new game for Disney on Alice in Wonderland. And, you know, it's really interesting. Alice in Wonderland was a story as a child that I actually didn't like very much. It was kind of disturbing to me on so many levels. I loved Wizard of Oz, but Alice in Wonderland, it just kind of creeped me out as a kid. Like I was like, there was just too many weird things in it. But as an adult, I've actually come to love it. And I really like all these different things about it. And I definitely, with this bariatric surgery, feel like a little like Alice falling through. I definitely fell through the hole, and I am on this whole new adventure, and there's all these strange and different things around me, and some things are too big and some things are too small, and there's weird cats and people, and like, you know, it's just been very Alice in Wonderland. And so thanks for reminding me of that, because that's a good touchstone for me, because I like adventure normally.
Right. Have fun with it. Laugh at the ridiculous.
I love it. I love it. That's great. I want to do that. Laugh at the ridiculous. What's that poem? And I love the way Johnny Depp did it. I wasn't Jabberwocky, you know, and all that the poem thing. And I feel like, yeah, I want to have some fun and laugh at the ridiculousness and just, yes, thanks for that reminder. I really appreciate that, T. Thank you. And, you know, you had said something too, EJ, you know, when I was struggling in the hospital, and you talked about it, and thing, I wanted you to know how much I appreciated that. I had gotten, you know, in a pretty darn dark place there. The first 72 hours, I wasn't sure I was getting out of that hospital and I was going home. Like I knew it was serious. And, you know, okay, please don't anybody freak out. I'm not having, you know, thoughts of grandeur or anything or whatever, but I felt like about 72 hours in, I felt like, I don't remember, I can't remember if I had talked to, I think it was Tia I'd talked to, but I I woke up and I had a really good, my very first quiet time. I actually got to open up the Bible on my phone, you know, and I did some praying, and I felt like I was communicating with God. And it was my first morning that I felt like I had hope. But I think what gave me hope was that I felt very clear from the Spirit that God said to me, girl, you're not ready. It's not your time. You're not coming home. I have more for you to do. And I need you to go do it. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know. And, you know, we've talked before in some of our other ones about peace and anxieties and all of these things. I had, even though I still couldn't breathe, you know, I was still like an 8 at that point on oxygen when I'd never had any, you know, and all this stuff. I felt so peaceful and content and like hopeful that, you know, I just felt like I didn't know how exactly I was going to get there, but that I had direction. I was supposed to go. when my body was still delayed and it wasn't quite listening yet. But, it just was this very hopeful, and I felt very clearly defined, like, okay, Lori, go. You have been told, go do more. So now you got to go do that, and
Well, and in that sense, it's kind of one of those moments where just like with Jesus, like how many people like injured, sick would come to Jesus and he's like, well, just get up and go walk. And he'd be like, just go do it. And so that was kind of your moment of that.
It was.
Like
I was
God's
out of
like,
the
I'm
hospital
not
4
done with
days
you
later.
yet. So keep, you got to just keep plugging along. And I think I know what you're talking about is that I mentioned you, because you always take a positive spin on things. And so I was like, okay, we got to put a positive spin on what's going on here.
Yes, and so you had helped me out that week because I was getting frustrated, and rightfully so, right? But it would, I'd had that odd CNA lady and who kept coming into my room and triggering me, and I was like, okay, she's got to go, and then and some people are feeling, just feeling like I wasn't being heard or just not even knowing. And you really helped me. You were like, you like to take a positive spin, so let's go do that, and you really challenged me back, because that's what I do as a life coaching person, as group facilitator. I try to get people to focus on the positive, not in what I've briefly talked about before, not toxic positivity, but powerful, direct, specific positivity that helps us turn that stuff around. Because we never want to gloss it over or just be happy to be happy. No, it's got to be purposeful.
Right.
I like that, purposeful versus the toxic.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then at that point, you'd had a few things change, and, you were basically told by your kids, like, we want you to get help because we want you here for your grandchildren. You've got 2 new grandchildren coming this year and you already have 4. So like, they want you around. So it's a good thing that you got sick when you did, because now you should be through most of the, recovery by the time your grandkids get here, the new ones. So
excited, June, and
yeah. So that's the kind of positive spin you need to put on things like that.
Thank you. And you helped me do that. So I want to say thank you.
I'm glad I could help.
I think what you guys are alluding to is that there's a difference between purposeful positivity. So knowing that you're in a tough place and that a part of your healing, a part of your moving forward is to be purposefully positive, like looking for things to be grateful for, looking for things that are in your control. Those are all wonderful, great things. And what I'm kind of hearing is that there's another side to that sometimes we can use positivity to avoid dealing. And that does, putting on a mask. And that is a thing that can happen. There is a little bit of time, there are times when we will start to, we'll put the positive spin on it to help us get through the moment. But then we get to the point where that's all we'll focus on. But this little dark spot is still sitting back here going, hey, we're not dealt with yet. And so it is important to acknowledge that. But I like the purposeful positivity, the purposeful gratefulness of being able to sit back and going, okay, yeah, my life sucks really bad right now. God knows it. He's got it. So let's look at where I can take control. And those things are what's going to move you forward.
It's so healing, and it really is very powerful. And that's why a lot of times when I share my story, and we've talked about this before, I get so many women or, how are you still standing? How are you still moving forward? You guys alluded to it in last week's podcast, this latest hiccup in my health journey, if we'll call it that, obstacle that I ran into, I'm definitely feeling a little Job-like. I'm like, God, did you miss the memo? I think my plate's full and I don't really have any more room here. And God's like, oh, no, I got you. I'm like, well, if you do, could you let me in on how that's going? Because I'm not feeling like you got it, and so and Job, if you're not a biblical person, God says, I have faith in you, my creation, Job, and I'm going to let all of these things happen to you because I know that you're still going to be faithful and you're still going to believe in me. And you're going to stay right where I need you to stay. You're going to show Satan that he's wrong, that there are faithful people in this world that I've created. And so Job proceeds to lose all of his children, his family, and I think he gets boils and scabs and all this stuff. And that's why you've heard the phrase, the patience of Job. And it's interesting because I often get told that I have the patience of Job. And so, and it's mostly because I'm really tapping into the strength and the power of the Holy Spirit that God gives me. So back to these women that I share my story with and people that I share my story with, how are you still standing? The only reason I'm still standing, the only reason I'm still here is because I do know, even when it's hard, even when I'm going through the umpteenth million, this is like my third massively major health thing. I never doubted God. I never doubted where I was at. Like I definitely am like, God, you and I are not quite communicating here. I'm a little overloaded here. And he's like, no, you're not. I got you. And I did feel that, but it was still scary. So when you're real about it, it's not that I wasn't scared. It's not that as I go through these things, I too get overwhelmed. I have to reach out. I have to have my tribe around me. I had to have EJ remind me, Lori, let's do what you tell everybody else to do. Let's do that together. Several conversations that we've had. Okay, let's process it. My counselor and I had to move all my appointments virtually because I've only been out of my house like twice since the hospital because I just don't have the energy or strength. And, so it's just been very different. But yet never have I felt like I was alone. There was a little time, that first 72 hours I came back from the hospital, but we've done that. I did it. I reached out. You and I had some great conversations, T. I had some good conversations with the sisters here in the church and my sons and my daughter-in-laws. And, it's just been amazing. I'm always amazed at the wonderful things that God does with the things that are going on in our lives. So
one of the things, and I think this is where I hear you have, in my opinion, you have some great things about your tribe. You have a lot of different personalities around you. So, but I kind of want to bring up to the surface something else too that I find to be very important, is being real and honest, because sometimes when people come to you or to one of us and says, oh my gosh, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you stay standing. Sometimes that puts us in a position of not being able to be vulnerable and authentic, of being able to come back and say, well, actually, I don't feel like I can. Yeah. And so, because then all of a sudden you have this persona that you have to live up to so you're not letting other people down. And these are conversations, Laura, you and I have had, of being able to be real and understand that even in using your example of Job, even Job at times had said, it's not me. I can't stand. I can't do this. I'm overwhelmed. God, why are you still doing this? Like you said, and God comes back and says, I've got you. But there's that moment where you're vulnerable and you don't feel like this is possible because you're looking at it on how do I get through this instead of how do we, God and I, get through this. So it's just, I just kind of wanted to put a little spotlight on how sometimes it can be really easy that we feel like we're supposed to be martyrs. We're supposed to be this great strength, but if we let people see the weak points, the hard points, the points where we didn't want to get out of bed, where we didn't we actually didn't get out of bed that day, and we just told everybody, oh, it's just not a good day, and try to put a good spin on it to others. But we were actually at a very weak point, because I think if we don't do that, then other people who try to use us as models are going to be let down when they experience something difficult and think, well, she did it, why can't I do it? So I think it's okay to be authentic and say, today was a bad day. Today I cried. Today I didn't do it. I just didn't.
You know, I'm really glad you said that. I think people were shocked. Remember my first Facebook post where I talked about some of that? And I talked about chucking the phone, like, you know, because people are like, Lori, you have the patience of Job. And I'm like, guys, I didn't
Jump
care.
through some things too, I think.
Right. I'm sure he did. I literally threw my phone, you know, onto my couch. It didn't break it or anything, thank God. You know, I just was so angry. I'd spent hours on the phone with this ridiculous medical system, which, you know, we're going to have to go back to at some time. I definitely want to do a whole thing on, you know, this whole ridiculous medical system that is so.
That's lots of technical.
But anyway, through my phone, I talked about that I cried into my pillow. I did. I just cried. I felt alone at one point, but then what I did was I did reach out. And I think what I identified was that I think because of all we're doing with this podcast, the counseling that I've been doing this last year and a half, the most powerful thing was that even though I felt those things, and there were days I didn't remember, I turned off my phone, or I just said, hey, everybody, I'm unplugging because I just can't deal with anything. I remember you guys talked about it. I mentioned, I don't know how to help people help me. Like, I don't know how to answer that question right now. Guys, I'm just trying to breathe.
Right.
I can't do anything more than just focus on the next breath.
Full disclosure, she was angry.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I was a little angry, wasn't I? Like, I can't, what's that line from Jerry Maguire? Help me, help you. My line was, I can't help you, help me. I can't. I just can't help you, help me. Wasn't that my line? That would have been my Jerry Maguire line. I cannot help you, help me. You're gonna have to figure it out on your own because I can't.
I think it was good for you to be angry, because that was against your nature. Your nature is, okay, life sucks right now. I'm going to make sure that I put on a smiley face. And then because that is what I equate to being strong. Instead,
Yes.
your angry was actually a nice, healthy, assertive angry. I really liked it.
Thank you. So, you know, I did cry into the pillow. I did have those moments where I was just like, if I have to swallow one more thing, if I have to do one more thing, I'm going to just chuck it all out the window, and maybe dying is better. You know, I had that thought, you know, not like and again, we've identified this, not in a slit your wrist kind of like I'm going to fall, just absolute low points saying, you know, I had this amazing conversation with a social worker who is, through my home health and everything. We had a great conversation, and I told her, and I want to write about this in this next book that I'm going to have. And, you know, I'm thinking more and more about the title of this next book, but I'm thinking maybe purposeful positivity versus toxic positivity. You know, I really want to go in and identify these things and talk about the health system and where we go and how we do these things. But I was talking to this social worker, and I told her, I was just being raw and real. And she goes, wow, I'm seeing things in a new way. But I told her, I said, I totally understand why people are going home and dying. It's very, if you don't have a tribe, if you don't have faith, if you don't, that first week home it was rough. It was not easy, and it was really, really hard. And I do have those things in place. And it was still very hard. And so I am very, very grateful for my tribe and my faith and the things that got me through. But, I told her, I said, if I were an 80-year-old, if I were mentally challenged, if I had anything that made what I was going through any more difficult, I'd just give up and be like, I'm ready to go. And now there's a bottle of pills there. There's some new meds that they've given me. What is my purpose here and why am I here? Like I connected on a level that I had never connected before. Like my stroke a little bit, because we talked about it after the stroke, but even again, like I was reminded, I used to think that people wanting to just end it all was very selfish. I really don't now. I see it on a very, very different level. And I just can understand why people go home and say, I can't do this anymore. What's the purpose? What am I doing this for? And it's really hard to get reconnected to those things without people in your lives to help you do that. It's so easy to get stuck in it. And it becomes this cycle now, and you can't get out of it without some help, professional help, tribe help, family help, love. It's what I will say over and over is we were created as relational beings. And so if we don't make those connections, that's what's causing us to just give it up and say, nope, I'm done. We have to reach out. We have to connect. And when we don't, that's how we get to that point. And I get it on such a level, and the social worker was like, this is really intense. I'm like, yep. That was what I got from it. And she's like, I'm going to be sharing this with, some of my people. And, she asked me if she could call me again, and she said, would you be willing? And, I'm a see a need, fill a need, stand in the gap kind of girl. So one of the things that I've determined after this, I did keep lots of notes as I could, especially the better I was feeling. I tried to go back and jot things down. How did I feel when this happened? What was going on when this happened? Because this system really is broken and it's not set up because it's a system. It's not able to really fully communicate with the humans that are trying to, use the system to communicate with. And it's not working very well. But yeah, so I figured that was a good thing to bring up in the mental piece,
I think some keywords that one you used and another one that should be included with it are purpose and intent.
And intent, yeah, I like intent.
I think those two things really translate well to most of the struggles that we can experience is what is our purpose and what is our intent.
Yes.
And if we can answer those questions, we can usually move forward.
Right? Yes, I so agree with that. Yes, very much agree with that. So yeah, that's kind of where I was. And
I feel like my update on my weight loss journey is going to be very short compared to what we just went through.
Well, I've been through a whirlwind here.
Right, you have. So about a year ago, I started working with a nutritionist. Before I was referred to the bariatric program, because my doctor was like, you really need to pursue this. And I'm like, I'll play your game for now, but I'm not really into it. And I did it. They did a whole bunch of lab work. Most of the lab work was normal. There was only a few like red flags. And by red flags, I mean like the numbers were just a hair below normal. So they weren't like majorly concerning. But numbers like my high cholesterol, my low cholesterol were where they're supposed to be, which was awesome because I know I have it in the family is like high cholesterol. So I kind of went through the summer and I was losing weight with working with the nutritionist, figuring out kind of what was causing me. I was realizing like I wasn't eating protein. Like carbs are easy to get. Protein was not something I was getting a lot in my body. And so by October, I had lost 50 pounds, which is awesome. But unfortunately, the holiday season hit. And by then I had said, I'm not doing the bariatric surgery. I told them I didn't want to continue to waste their time doing something that I'm not going to do. And I was adamant about it, and I still am, that I'm not going to have the surgery. So I've definitely struggled with the weight. I have put on a little bit, but then I have already lost another 10 pounds. And my doctors put me on another medication, and I'm realizing a lot more of part of the problem was my body is sensitive to certain foods that I didn't realize I was sensitive to. And unfortunately for me, I'm finding that carbs and dairy are big no-nos for me. So it's really a challenge because I'm having to modify pretty much every meal I've ever learned how to make, because usually one of them, it's both of them or one of them are in that. And it's been a struggle. So I'm finding like I'm choking down protein drinks because my doctor literally just said like a couple weeks ago, you're malnourished. You're not getting enough protein. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Eat meat all day? Because I can't do tofu. I can't do all the So it's definitely been a challenge. So I'm losing a little bit. And part of it, I think, Lori, for you, you were overweight kind of in your adult life. I've been overweight all my life. So there's a little, for me, it's different. And I've always said I'm proportionately overweight, where like my hips, my chest, I'm overweight everywhere and not just in certain parts of my body. So sometimes it doesn't feel like I've lost weight, but then in other things, like, there's shirts that I put on now and they're like twice the size that I, can wear, so there's shirts I can't wear anymore, which is great. So I am losing inches again, but then that doesn't always correlate to losing weight, which is causing a struggle and it kind of depresses me just flat out, like, because it sucks. Like, I can't seem to get it under control. And even working with my nutritionist, she said, she's like, you know what you need to do. You've done it. You've seen yourself be successful with it. She's like, now we just need to stay on top of it. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the problem. Specifically, my nutritionist had recommended a specific protein powder. Well, it didn't dawn on me until after I'd gone through about most of the container of protein powder that it was dairy-based whey protein. So I'm like, well, no wonder I haven't been losing weight. Last year, when I started drinking just like what you buy on the shelf for the protein drinks, like the Premier Protein or something, those are also dairy-based proteins. So I was putting in and causing myself to gain weight. So that's been frustrating. But on the good end, my numbers that were a little hairy last year have been rechecked and things are better from losing some weight, as well as getting a little bit better on the nutrition side. My pre-albumin is still low, but not like terribly low, but it's definitely meaning I need to get more protein in. So I'm having to force myself to do protein shakes, but I'm also finding now that I've been doing the protein shakes, I'm not as hungry anymore. So I'm not eating because I'm bored or eating because I just feel like I'm hungry when I'm really not hungry. So it's definitely the pieces of that. And I'm sure there was some stress because we talked last week in the podcast, going through with what you went through, dealing with it on, and for me, feeling helpless because I couldn't go there. Just like I'm 5.5 some odd hours away from you. So it was like, that was a stressor on me. And I'm like, this sucks. Like, so it really put up a nasty piece. And I admit, like, I've been struggling with my job for a long time. It's not what I want to do permanently, like for my career. And in the last week or so, an opportunity has come up that I'm going to do. And it's doing what I want to do, which I'm already doing with, helping out some people. And I'm not going to share what it is right now, at least on the podcast, until things are a little more settled. But I'm excited on where it's going. And I also feel like it's going to free me up to give myself a little more health, because my schedule is so crazy that there's days where I have to be at work early. There's days I have to be there later in the day. So it makes it really challenging to have a consistent eating schedule and a consistent meal prep time where I can sit down and I can make a meal like that I can prep for like a week, or I can prep for 3 or 4 days. So I'm hoping that this new career path will open up me some opportunities to where I have some time during the day to sit down and be like, okay, I can make, enough chicken for the week, or I can make, a meal for this week. And I think that's going to help my mental state, because I already feel right now that kind of moving in that positive direction. But there's definitely been a lot of frustration, and it's really kind of affecting me mentally. So I'm kind of trying to like really nail that down, and I hate it because it's like, I don't know. So my struggle has been just learning what's the problem and trying to address it. And, I lost the 50, I put like 10 pounds back on. And so I'm just starting to lose those 10 pounds again. So I'm not back to where I was in October, but I'm getting there.
So girl, I want to address something that I think is really important. Right here before I forget it. Okay. I really want to encourage you, like really, stop looking at the scale. It's the worst measure ever.
It is. I agree.
The only reason that I'm using it is because I'm trying to meet some goals for my knee replacement and my liver transplant. I have to be at a certain BMI. One of the things that I've learned through the Berry Nation, through my counselor, through all of this stuff, the scale is the worst tool, and it doesn't help you. And
I agree.
It doesn't, if you're not going to do the surgery, okay, here's what you do want to focus on. You want to focus on the inches. You want to focus on how you feel. How does your body feel? You know your body better than any doctor, nurse, nutritionist, whoever. Listen to your body. I'm learning these things.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is also pay attention to the numbers. So your vitamins, all those things that were off that are now on, there's your successful measuring tool.
Right.
Not the scale. The scale has nothing. It does nothing for you. So if you don't have a reason, a very specific reason like me, to use the scale, and if anybody's out there listening to this, throw your scale out the window. Get rid of it. That's what you should chuck out the window.
Or you can do what I do.
What?
I adjust it so that it's a couple pounds too heavy, so that when I get on it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. The scale is off. I can subtract a few pounds.
Oh my God.
Makes me feel better.
Reverse psychology there. I love it.
Thank you.
Seriously, I want to
you're
encourage
right.
you to chuck the scale out the window, put it in the trash. I mean, I don't know, hide it away in a cupboard, because we do need it right here and there. We do want to check. But unless you are trying to meet some very specific medical goal, please stop paying attention to your scale. It won't help you. And mostly, it will give you depression, anxiety. It's going to freak you out, and it's not going to help you. So
you make a good point, and I appreciate you saying that, and you're right. Because I've always said that too, because I feel like, especially for me, with me being overweight all my life, a lot of it has been fluid retention. And so I can like literally like just look at water and I can put 10 pounds on. I mean, I swear that's how it works. But when I just recently saw my doctor for my yearly checkup, and I was, the 10 pounds up, and I was like, because it all, like, for me, I've talked in the past episodes about having polycystic ovarian syndrome. Well, one of the problems with that is it comes with some more side effects around your cycle, your hormones, when your hormones are imbalanced, because of which it is a hormone imbalance. So then it causes more problems. So around my cycle, I noticed that I put on like 10 pounds in fluid. And so when I was up those extra 10 or 15 pounds, I was actually right around my cycle. So a lot of that was fluid retention. So my doctors actually put me on an additional diuretic, which has been helping. And I actually feel a hell of a lot better. Like my blood pressure is more normal. And I'm like waking up at 7:30 in the morning. Lori could never get me out of bed before 9. Like, even if days like she'd have an appointment, I'd wake up like 5 minutes before we had to leave, throw clothes on, and we're out the door, just because I'm like, and I'm groaning because I hate being up. Now I actually am awake in the mornings when I get up. So I feel like that's a huge step for me. And you're right about the weight. Like, I know I don't check myself every day, which is good, but I do have,
don't do it.
No, I've learned that because I've, gone through like different Weight Watchers programs and whatnot. So, and then that's one thing they say is like, don't weigh yourself every day. There are certain people, I will say this, there are certain people that have like congestive heart failure and stuff who do have to weigh themselves daily, because if they are up a couple extra pounds, they do have to like take a water pill just to make sure that that fluid is not causing pressure on their heart. So there are
That's
certain
a very
reasons why.
specific medical reason that
Yes.
you have to do it.
And
Other than
that's
that,
advised by your
you
doctor.
should not be following it. Yes.
Right. But yeah, so, and in it, and though I was encouraged too, like Lori brought over a whole bunch of clothes of hers that when she visited me around the holiday season, she brought a whole bunch of clothes from her closet that she could never wear because they're too big for her. Well, Lori was a hair smaller than me anyway. So just knowing that I can wear some of those clothes, it's crazy. Like, cause even 3 years ago when we were living together, or 4 years ago, some of those clothes I couldn't wear. So that's encouraging. So I am trying to be more positive on the things I can do. And, the other stuff will come. So yeah, so the mental piece has definitely been a challenge the last, 9 months or so with the weight, but it's a growing process. And you're right. Like, I don't have like an emergent need to lose the weight in a certain time frame. Whereas you have, like, you got your liver condition, you have your knees that you need things done. And the less weight you have to put pressure on those joints that are going to possibly be replaced, the better. So that's understandable. So I don't have that at this time, knock on wood that I don't anytime in the future, but yeah, so I'm getting there. It's definitely, yeah, it's
a journey. All right, T, give us your wisdom.
Well, now that that's pushing it.
We share a little.
All right, so a couple of things pop into my head. First thing I want to talk about. I've had weight loss in the past, and my gallbladder went out. It was the best diet I was ever on.
I've heard that. Mine went out and I put 10 pounds on, so I can't say the same thing.
Mine went undiagnosed for what was it, about 9 months?
Yeah,
we thought it was my back, because I have this weird thing where if I have pain in my front, I actually feel it in my back. If it's in my back, I feel it in my front. So it was really confusing because the doctors kept checking my back. They're like, there's nothing wrong. And it would put me down. But I also lost my appetite during that time. And my primary care, I'd lost 24 pounds in a month. That's very startling. And my doctor, she asked me, she goes, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I can't eat. I literally cannot eat right now. When I can force myself to eat something, I make sure it's green. And then I try to make sure there's protein in it, of some meat and a green lettuce, no dressing, which was weird for me because I was a ranch girl. And she goes, well, we'll just call it healthy anorexia. I'm like, okie dokie, we'll go with that. And I lost like 80 pounds back then. And it's pretty significant, but it brought me down under 200, and which I hadn't been since I was a very young adult. And so I was excited, and I was like, I'm never going back over 200. Mm-hmm. That was part of the problem. I said never. But when I moved up here and I was working a pretty sedentary job, I went back up over 200. I gained about half my weight back. And it was pretty disturbing. And I was really upset with myself because I was like, there was no reason to go back up over. But it was just life. I just got distracted by life, and I just didn't have the energy because of everything going on in my life to focus on me, to take care of me. Well, the last probably up to a year, but the last 6 months especially, I've been more purposefully self-care, more purposefully taking care of myself. And that's a piece of it too, is that I'm choosing not to degrade myself for what I see in the mirror. I'm looking for the positives and being comfortable with myself and who I am. And I look for the evidence to support that. So when I teach clients is what we call a cognitive triangle. And if you picture a triangle, and at the top of the triangle, you picture writing thoughts. And then in one corner, write behavior, and in another corner, write feelings. And then you draw two-way arrows between each point. The reason is because they all affect each other. So a lot of times I have clients coming in and they're really struggling at one of the points, but they can't make changes. So we look at one of the other points where they're more comfortable of dealing with. So if someone's dealing with a lot of anxiety, but they just can't seem to get that anxiety to come down, then we talk about thoughts and behaviors. So if we have a behavior that's a real big struggle, then we explore what are the thoughts and feelings happening behind that behavior. So if I'm struggling getting up and getting moving, then I'm going to stop and look at why. What am I thinking? What are the thoughts that I'm having? And those will often lead to some negative core beliefs I might have. And then what are the feelings that I'm having? Now, what are things I can do to address those things and feel better? Well, it turned out for me, it was a couple of things. It was understanding that exercising for exercising's sake does not work for me. I have to have fun. And I think most of us are that way. So my daughter blessed me with some money earlier this year, and I got a virtual reality headset called an Oculus, and I played Beat Saber. That got me up and moving, and I dropped like 5 pounds just like that. When I'm doing it consistently, I start dropping the weight, the pounds. And then about a year or two ago, I dropped sugar out of my diet because I did the keto thing, and I discovered that I could, as a matter of fact, survive without sugar, processed sugar. I do have things like Swerve and the non-sugar sugars, not the yellow and pink packets or blue packets, but because aspartame is not good for you. But anyway, I made changes that I could make, and then there's that measure of acceptance. Like, I accept that I am still, just regardless of my weight, I'm still me. I still have lots to offer. And when I get, like I said earlier, when I get new clothes to try on, that used to trigger me really bad. Like, I would cry for hours after going shopping. That's one of the things I don't do very often anymore. And I would try on the clothes there at the store, and I would just end up in tears because I hated the way I looked, and I hated the way certain things looked at me that I so wanted to look good in. So I changed. Yeah. So now I have fun with it. There are things that look great on me. I love how they look on me, and I love how I look in them, because I've gained this acceptance of my body as part of who I am. But I also will try on things that I know for a fact won't work, just so I can have a good laugh. Because now it's like, of course, that's not going to look good on me. Yellow's not my color. Or, and because I have found things that I do like the way they look, I'm not so upset when I find things that I don't like how they look. That's okay. It's not my cup of tea. That's cool. So I would say evaluating our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And if we're struggling in one of those areas, go to the other area. The other one is some purpose and intent, and then some self-care and acceptance.
Amen. And I think that's a really good point. In self-care, I'm finding in the last maybe month or two, I'm getting some more self-care in. And for me, self-care is even if it's just sitting down and crocheting for a half an hour.
Yes.
You're
telling yourself you love yourself.
Yeah, that I can do something that I want to do.
Yes.
You're worthy of spending that time.
Right. and I'm finding like I'm going to bed at a more normal hour, and I'm, because since you only see above the neck here, these Zoom things, my legs, I have really bad edema in both my legs, and everyone keeps thinking, oh, it's lymphedema, it's lymphedema. Well, I've already been told that it's not lymphedema. So I actually have the circulation massage boots that you basically put on with Velcro, and then you just turn them a little button on, and it cycles. It helps do a massage basically on your lower legs, and it helps push that fluid back up into your legs. And then you can actually urinate it out like you're supposed to. So I've been doing that for an hour every night before I go to bed, which is helping a lot. And Lori, you're going to be surprised when you see my legs next, because they're not going to look the same as they were. They're still swollen, but nowhere near they were. And again, like a lot of my weight has been carried around in my legs. So if I lose another 10 pounds out of just my legs, and I'm noticing every time I put them on, I have to tighten the Velcro a little bit more because they're, so I know there's a difference. And unfortunately with lymphedema, oftentimes that swelling never goes away. Well, it is going away, and it's staying away. So I definitely am more keen to believe that it is not lymphedema like I was first diagnosed with.
A little side note on that, EJ, is that back in about 2004, it really came to awareness that I had edema, pitting edema, and at first it wasn't really bad, so none of us really noticed it. But then I would sit down, and within 30 seconds, you couldn't tell my feet from my legs. And so I was really struggling with that. So they put me on triamterene hydrochlorothiazide. I can say it now. Anyway, which is a blood pressure medication, but it's also a diuretic. And like within a week, I lost like 30 pounds. I was carrying 30 pounds of water weight around. It was crazy.
I'm on hydrochlorothiazide now too. That's what my doctor just put me back on.
So keep an eye on your potassium, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. So I have bananas every day. Just
good.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah,
so I was on that for a couple years. Well, I didn't stay on it because it's hard to have medical when you're working for fast food, and anyway, that was it. And it was also when I was first starting college. It was right around that time, so that's why I'm picking the year 2004. But also, so I was sporadically on it. So I'm really glad you're on it, because when I went off it, it wasn't long after that I actually had a heart attack when I was 37.
Oh, okay.
And I look back and I'm like, I'm still on the same medication because it's a diuretic. So I do have edema. And I did some research recently, and edema is connected with heart attacks.
Yeah.
So it's good that you're addressing that. I'm really happy that you're addressing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I am too. I know that from what I've understood, the swelling is from when your blood is not circulating properly. And so the fluid will just settle in your lowest limbs, because that's just where it's settling, and it's not
enough force to bring it back up.
Yeah. So and it's not necessarily because you're sitting all the time, or because like people who are super active can also have this problem. It just happens, and that's why like blood clots can cause, that's where blood clots can settle in, and and fluid can cause that, because it can cause like a blockage in a vein or a nerve. So it's definitely something
liver
serious.
Disease, because that's where I get it from. Because I have edema, but mine is specifically connected with my liver.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's amazing all the different things that can cause these things.
And I'm definitely really on top of it. And for what you said, Tina's, for the heart stuff, because I definitely don't want to do any more Deustrain. And for a long time I was going with, my blood pressure's, when the medication that I've been on, spironolactone, I've been on for a long time. And my doctor increased it a couple years ago. And my blood pressures with that has been sitting around 140/80. So it's not terrible, but it's definitely on the high end of good. So she's like, yeah, I think we need to get it down. And so then she suggested putting me back on hydrochlorothiazide. So I'm on both, which is great, because the spironolactone doesn't deplete your potassium. But the hydrochlorothiazide can. So we are definitely keeping, I think I have to go in every 3 to 6 months to get it checked, which is good. So yeah, so we're definitely staying on top of that, because it's a very serious thing, and your heart pumps all that fluid in and around your body. And if your veins and your fluid are not there, So I have to, like, even though I'm on a diuretic to get rid of the fluid, I still have to drink water. And that's something I have to remember too, which is hard to do. But even now, like when I make my protein shakes, I just use water just to get an extra cup of water in a day with the smoothie. So yeah. And it's crazy how your mental, how much the mental impacts the physical and the physical impacts the mental. Yeah. And I'm glad I'm seeing this stuff now and I can make the changes, the healthy changes now.
Mhm.
So I'm not in a situation like Lori is, where she's basically like, if you don't lose this weight, like in the next year and get on the transplant list, you're going to die, you know, is kind of where Lori's at. I'm thankfully not there. And I'm grateful to God that he's given me this opportunity to work on it on my own. Cause I feel like I'm going to be more successful in the long run losing weight, because I'll make the habits now before it becomes a need, like an emergent need.
And you're going to be doing it at a pace, so therefore you can gain some of that acceptance, of dealing with body image. Because I think one of the really important things that you talked about, EJ, and this applies to you too as well, Lori, but you've dealt with weight since a child. You don't know what you're going to look like without it, and that can be a trigger. That can be something that will give you setbacks, that as you see body changes or as other people notice it, you're going to have this piece in you that's like, well, I'm not me anymore.
Right.
Who is that person? I don't know who that person is. What does that person care about? What is that person like? You know, are people going to still accept me in this as this new person? Are they going to have new expectations of me? Are they going to think that I can do more or should do more or should behave a certain way? And it's just going to all come at you. And so there's going to be some, it's okay that those questions happen. It's okay that those thoughts happen, but it's understanding that you are still you.
Yep.
Nothing about that has changed. And that you can learn to set boundaries and limits around that as you go. Because like I said, people's attitude about you are going to change as your visual changes. And that's normal. That they're not doing anything abnormal. It's just, you gotta have to be able to set those limits and boundaries as you go. And Lori, that's something that you've had to work on.
Really, I was like, okay, she's in my head again. She's in my head
Amen.
again.
And I think that's a good segue, because Lori even alluded to this too. You know, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the spiritual aspect of this, because, you know, we are all faithful women. We've all in various ways discussed the strength we have from God and things. And I think there's some great scriptures that go along with that. And I know we're not going to be able to share all of them, because I think we all have a lot of great ones.
EJ, you can put those in the link bio, right? You could just put those in our things so people can have access to them.
To the ones we don't cover.
Yeah. And yeah, I suggest, ladies, you know, because we do want to respect and honor time for all of us and our listeners, maybe we just each pick one and then let's put the rest in the link.
That works. Yeah. Well, so we'll go ahead and we'll add. We have quite a few of them in our notes, so I think we're just going to share a couple of them, because I do, you know, and I know a lot of our listeners may not be Christians or may not be, you know, consistently attending a church body, and that's okay. You can be spiritual. A lot of these scriptures are just easy to reminders that, you know what, God made us a certain way. God made us in his image, regardless of what we look like right now. So God made you for the reasons you are right now. And I think a lot of us forget that, because we're not the cover model. We're not the, you know, on the cover of all these magazines. We're not in the swimsuit model. I mean, that's not us, but that's not me. And ever, like, I would never be caught dead in a bikini, even if I was skinny. Like, that's just not my thing. Like, I'm a tomboy. Jeans and a t-shirt, tennis shoes, that's me, like 7 days out of the week. And then Sundays, I might put a blouse on, just saying, and like with jeans. And that's how I go to church, just because that's me. My job, I wear jeans and a t-shirt to work. Like, I don't like dressing up, and that's never going to change regardless of how I lose weight. Will it be easier maybe to find clothes that look nice on me? Sure. But am I going to feel like myself? Probably not.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting. I remember watching, I think it was Princess Diaries, the first one, you know, where they have to remake Hathaway's character you know,
Princess Mia.
yes, Princess Mia, and excuse me.
Amelia Thermopolis Rinaldi.
Oh my gosh, yeah, okay.
I've seen the
So,
movie a few
yeah,
times. It's a good
I like
movie.
it, but pardon me for the the cough there. I definitely identified. I'm a bit of a tomboy. I have, it was very kind of forced on me from a young age. So I never really had a choice about wearing really pretty dresses and doing all this stuff, but I never felt comfortable in them. I was never going to be like that person strutting down the catwalk, you know, showing off all my beauty and glory, and walking in heels is for the birds, people. I don't know. We have this one sister, we have a couple of sisters who, oh, they just rock those heels, and they have these huge heels and these dresses, and they're just, you know who I'm talking about. They're so glorious. This one, she was having twins. I think she was still wearing heels up to like third trimester. I'm like, how are you walking? I walk like a penguin at the third trimester. I waddled.
And you only had one baby at a time.
Right. And I only had one baby at a time. She was having twins, and I'm like, you're making me sick. You know, I can't do that. But, you know, there are people who love to do that. I do for special occasions and things like that, or a certain event. I do like to put on the makeup and put on the dress and go on a date or go to a really cool thing. And I do like to do it, but I want it as a choice. But then in the rest of my time, you know, I'm an old California surfing girl. So, you know, I want to be in a bathing suit underneath, shorts, flip-flops, and some kind of, you know, kind of a cover up or a t-shirt over it or whatever. And then in the car, I would have, and these are in my younger days, but I would have, you know, something a little more presentable, you know, no shoes, no shirt, no service, you know, kind of thing. So if I wanted to go out with my friends later, I'd have to do the quick change in the car and then, you know, go. But I love a good pair of shorts or jeans. You know, I like to be comfortable in my skin and what I'm wearing. And I'm even not really a very pattern, like what I love. You know, I'm not a huge pattern girl. I don't like that, but I just want to feel comfortable in my skin. And I feel that way when I'm in, you know, some leggings or shorts or whatever, and my favorite shirt. And in the winter, there's a sweater or vest over that. And then in the summer, it's, you know, just tank tops and whatever. I love that. And now that I'm losing weight and my body is getting healthier, it's a little easier to feel less judged, feel less looked at when I'm wearing my favorite things, you know, which is a good thing. I want to touch on something that you said, EJ. Yes, we never want to, there's an old-fashioned term, we're not Bible thumping you here, people. We don't want to shove anything down your throat. We just want to share where we're at. I really, a huge thing for me this year, even in my faith, for me has been a mindfulness. And this is something that I know a lot of you can touchstone with me here. I want to be more content. I want to connect. I've learned that we're relational beings. We can't do it alone. So I'm learning those things, but just really being more mindful, grounded, centered. These are a lot of words that I feel like most of you can do. But for EJ and T and myself, we find that grounding when we're touching, and the touchstone is the scripture. But you may find it elsewhere. You may find a mantra, you might find a phrase, you know, something like that, you know, cognitive triangle that T was talking about, or some kind of mantra, a vision that you can focus on, brings you back to, you know, kind of ground zero. Picture roots going into the ground, rivers, flood, whatever it is that you find comforting. But for us, that touchstone is often a scripture, along with those other things.
Right. Which, speaking of, what's yours? What are you going to
So
pick?
mine is, I just have loved it so much. It's the 1 Corinthians 6:19-20. Do you not know that your bodies are the temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You're not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. And that's really what I've been trying to do with this bariatric surgery, with the choices that I've been making, with the changes that I'm making. I'm trying to honor my God. I say all the time, every day, if I can find some way in this day to bring God glory, then I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. I've met my goal. And then if I can count my blessings, and be grateful, and then to connect with the cross, to be mindful, to lay my burdens and anxieties down at the foot of the cross, know that I was bought with a price. It is Easter, this weekend was definitely bought with a price. My Savior made a very deep sacrifice and died and then rose again. And he loves me and he cares about me and he gives me purpose and intent. And I love that. And because I didn't know previously for the longest time, from any time, because of all my abuse and everything else in my past, and then becoming a young adult and going through more abuse and more trauma, I didn't realize that I was supposed to love myself, that I was supposed to love the body, that I was supposed to love what was created. So this scripture really reminded me, my body is the temple. That's where the Holy Spirit's supposed to abide. And when it's not healthy, where is he supposed to abide? How is he supposed to connect with me if my body is just overrun with all these things? Kind of hard for him to, it's hard for me to hear the Spirit when I'm not giving him the space and the honor to which he's due. So that's why I connect so deeply with the scripture now. Yeah, so there's mine.
I know what ones Tina's going to share. Do you have anything to share with it?
Do you have anything to share with mine?
Is there a reason why you go to this one specifically?
I think because I find it to just so fundamental and so just at the core of things. And I also like it, how it makes me feel very empowered. Like there's just a lot of empowerment in this one. But it's Psalms 139:14. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. So God can't create anything bad. And but my favorite part of that is the fearfully and wonderfully. There's just something about the way that's phrased that just really makes me feel empowered, and that I'm part of God's plan. It's pretty awesome.
Love that scripture. Thanks for sharing too.
Amen. Those are great scriptures, and I think it's important to have those go-to scriptures. And I remember when I had first started studying the Bible, one of the sisters had shared something with me, and because I was definitely very self-conscious of my looks at the time, not because I was embarrassed, because I'm very confident with who I am, but I was going into a new environment. I was being around a lot of people, and I was worried that people were going to be judging me for what I looked like, or start making snap judgments about what I, did or didn't do in my life or my health. And something she shared with me is 1 Peter 3, 3-4. And it says, your beauty should not come from the outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. And I think that's so important, that regardless of what we look like, it's how we treat people. It's how we act. It's how we do things in our life. It's what we do. And yeah, I'm overweight, but I'm a nice person. So many people love me for who I am, come to me when they need help. And that's the kind of person I want to be. And that's going to be the same, as Tina was saying earlier, that's going to be the same regardless of what I look like. And that's what's important in our lives, is that we can be who we are authentically without worrying about what we're going to say, do, be, because God loves us. And God doesn't care about how much jewelry we have or what color our clothes are. It's like what we are on the inside that counts. And I know that sometimes that's a cliche to say, but it's so true. And if we would stop focusing so much on what we are looking like on the outside and start focusing more on what we can do and be on the inside and what we can share with the world, I think we'd all be in a better place mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally.
When those things fall into place, in my experience, not only for myself, but observing others. So when you gain that acceptance and that love for yourself, the choices you make change. So they reflect that inner confidence, that inner contentment. And when you make those choices, your health improves.
And I feel like I'm in that spot right now because I'm finally at that point in my life. And then all of a sudden, this opportunity came at me for this new career path. I'm like, I don't think this would have been there last year. And so just the opportunity that it's arisen now as I'm getting my life back on track and my health is getting better is totally God. It's God, totally God.
You know, I totally feel like that's what I envisioned when I thought of this podcast, and I reached out to the two of you. And you know, we're a little past our year mark, but just a little past my surgery date. You know, what I see with this podcast is how much we're all growing and changing and building each other up. And I am so excited to see where, you know, I went back recently because I had some time with all the sickness and illness to go back and listen to some of the episodes just because I wanted to reconnect. And then I'm thinking about what we're talking about now, and I can see the growth, I can see change, I can see mental health, spiritual health, physical health, all these things coming together for all of us. Sorry, I'm about to lose my voice apparently. But apparently I'm very emotional about this, but I just want to say thank you, ladies. And thank you for our listeners and our support. And because this is what I wanted when I thought about this podcast. And I'm love seeing it come to fruition. I'm love seeing it become this new healthy reality and change in all of our lives. And I'm grateful for this opportunity. And thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. And thanks, ladies, for being by my side, because I couldn't do it without you.
And a fun journey.
Amazing journey. So thank you. Thank you so much. All right, Erin, wrap us up.
Okay. Just a friendly reminder that anything discussed in this podcast is not to be used as a diagnosis or a replacement for conversations with your own doctors, therapists, psychologists, or other medical professionals. This episode is available on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and more. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Behind the Mask PC. If you don't use social media, you can email us at behindthemaskpc@gmail.com. Feel free to review us on Anchor, leave feedback on the platform you listen to us on, or message us through our social media or email, because we'd love to hear what you think. If there's a topic you'd like to hear us talk about, feel free to message us and we'll see about making it happen. You can find EJ on Twitter and Instagram as EJ8302. And on behalf of the ladies and myself, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.